terms of just, yeah, and maybe changing the way that you're teaching mid-course, midway through the course, or even midway through the lecture. Do you have any examples of that?
Well, one thing that Rachel was going to get to, but didn't have time to, is think, pair, share exercises. So if you ask questions of your audience, but you're not getting a lot of hands up, a good way to overcome this is doing think, pair, share. So you give them 2 minutes to think about a question by themselves, then they get into a small group and discuss it there so that they don't feel like it's all on them. And then they come back to the larger group and give the answer that their group discussed. So
can I maybe put up the slide?
Yes.
So
Sure. Great.
Keep talking, this is going to take me.
Yeah, so think, pair, share is a good one, and that's again one that I learned through the Center for Teaching Excellence. So that one works really well. When you're just generally asking questions, another thing that works well is doing a 1-minute paper. So ask them a question, have them write the answer or whatever you want them to reflect on in 1 minute, so it gets them engaged, even if they're too shy to talk out loud, and then have a few people reading their answers, or collect them and read some out yourself if you have a really shy class. Another thing that I did for this last semester was, it's a rather shy group. I don't even know if shy, but maybe somewhat unengaged. So what I did was say, I'd pick different things so they couldn't predict it and dress accordingly, but I'd be like, anyone wearing green, anyone who has a Tim Hortons cup on their desk, and there was a lot in that class. Anyone with a laptop, and they'd try to like slink their laptop. Because that way, and I'd only pick things that at least 5 people in the class of 60 or so had, and that way you're not putting anyone directly, you wait for one of them in the group to finally put up their hands, but you're not. So they thought it was funny because they got to look around and see who got picked on next, but they didn't feel super on the spot. If they were really uncomfortable and shy, they just wouldn't put up their hands, you know.
I think the best strategy is, this is when you're lacking engagement, fun, right? Make things fun for people. So think, pair, share is a great one. They're like, they burn up time in such a great way, but like useful. And so there are different ways that you can partner people up. So typically they sit next to people who have similar views to them, right? They're sitting next to friends. And so you sometimes want to break that up. So you say, okay, time to get up and move. Go pick someone from a different row, right? That you haven't sat with. Or try to find someone who you know voted differently than you, right? If you're using clickers or something like that. And then, so that's the pairing part, but then there's also sharing, right? So typically when the sharing starts, you ask for volunteers, right? But some people, right, if you're having an engagement problem, you're not going to do that, so you just pick someone, right? As new instructors, you're usually really afraid to just pick on someone and say, you, what do you think? But they're really willing to answer if you actually just put them on the spot, okay? Another thing you can do is, what you do is not ask them what they think, but ask them what their partner said. And it's funny, the very first time you ever do this, they're about to say what they thought. Wait, what did they say? But when you keep doing this, what's nice is it doesn't put them on the spot anymore. It's not what they thought, it's what their crazy partner thought, right? So they're much more willing to engage. And then what you can do is, when someone says something, you get to engage the rest of the class, and you say, okay, whose partner disagreed with that, or something like that. You get like a debate going. One way to have a fun debate, I have a doggy toy that's like soft sort of Nerf thing, but squeaky. And so I just throw it at someone, and they've got to answer the question. They always love squeaking it, and then they throw it to someone else who has to answer, and you get the sort of class fun that way. Yeah. Having an engagement problem, you're not going to do that, so you just pick someone, right? As new instructors, you're usually really afraid to just pick on someone and say, you, what do you think? But they're really willing to answer if you actually just put them on the spot. Another thing you can do is, what you do is not ask them what they think, but ask them what their partner said. And it's funny, the very first time you ever do this, they're about to say what they thought. Wait, what did they say? But when you keep doing this, what's nice is it doesn't put them on the spot anymore. It's not what they thought, it's what their crazy partner thought, right? So they're much more willing to engage. And then what you can do is, when someone says something, you get to engage the rest of the class, and you say, okay, whose partner disagreed with that, or something like that. And you get like a debate going. One way to have a fun debate, I have a doggy toy that's like soft sort of Nerf thing, but squeaky. And so I just throw it at someone, and they've got to answer the question. They always love squeaking it, and then they throw it to someone else who has to answer, and you get the sort of class fun that way. Yeah.
I'd like to pick up another point too, just for the lack of student engagement. So let's say you're sick, you have a sore throat, your ears hurt, you have a fever. What do you do? Anyone?
Put on a movie.
Let's say you have no clue, you don't know what's wrong with you, you're kind of warm, feeling a little gross. What do you do?
I would tell my students to pair up into groups, come up
Yeah, no. Well, I think that you'd continue with your cold for a little bit longer than most people would. I would go to the doctor, right? Something's wrong with you, you check your temperature, you figure out what's going on. So if we're having this problem with our students, instead of just, like, we can use engagement tools and things like that, but if you're really not getting through to them after that, you need to do a temperature check and see what's going on in the room, right? So I can give you an example. My first large class that I ever taught last fall, 240 students, I was terrified. Introduction to methods in sociology, statistics and qualitative. So I'm good with the stats, but I was a bit overwhelmed. Coming into the room, they were very put off the first day. They thought the TA, he was a young male, was the instructor. So that was a great way to start things off, being so young myself. They were a bit off-put. I was getting a lot of really weird looks. So I thought, okay, this has to be me. This really does. There's, you know, it's got to be something. I'm too young, I'm too inexperienced, whatever. I started going through those forms, the first day forms, and all the questions said, how much math is in this course? How much math do I need to know? I'm a social science student. And then I started getting emails, the flood of emails after the first day. Am I going to be okay? I can't do math. So I thought, okay, I went into class the second day, and I designed a PowerPoint presentation called Math Anxiety. And I went through and I asked them some questions like, you know, what's 2 plus 2 plus 2? Now divide that by 3, right? You just figured out a mean, right? Bunch of things like that, really simple questions. And I rewarded them with Pop Rocks and Coke, and then taught them about generating knowledge from urban legends, had them drink the Coke, eat the Pop Rocks. So they had a little bit of fun from there. But after that, I had them laughing, engaged, and never had a participation problem after that. And all I had to do was tell them, you know, show them they could do math, and then tell them, I dropped out of university level math in high school because I was failing. I've been afraid of this too my whole life, but I promise you, if you put in some effort, I'll make sure all of you understand it. And they remembered that on the course evaluation forms. They wrote, she promised that we would understand it, and hey, we did. So this was something, just check in. Maybe there's something going on that's external to you as a teacher that you might not know about.
I fear that my question may be overly cynical. But I guess I sort of wonder about, at least I found as a TA and as sort of staff instructional support, that I spend a lot of my time dealing with students who are not very happy for one reason or another. They're struggling really hard, they're not interested, and they haven't put the work in, and so they're not happy with their grades. And I guess I'm wondering if anyone has any tips and suggestions for keeping kind of a better sense of the room as a whole, as well as obviously the variety of individual needs the students have, but kind of keeping some perspective on that and how to figure out when you've got kind of systemic problems versus, well, you got some people who really don't want to be here, and you know, or you know, personal challenges or other things going on for students.
One thing that you can do is the 1-minute paper that I discussed before, halfway through the course, or if you feel there's a problem coming on, you can do a 1-minute paper with what am I doing well, what am I doing badly, and what should I start doing, things like that. So you can ask them those 3 questions, and that way you can get a sense of the audience and see if everyone's coming up with a common problem, then you can address it. So that's something that you can do.
So our university has a funny policy. If you get caught cheating, you come to my course. They send you to an ethics course. And these people take it pass-fail. And so they tend to be very disengaged, right? Not happy, they don't care, but they're just sort of putting them in their own work. So when I do think, pair, share sorts of activities, I walk amongst people, right? So I get, and I ask them, I go to these people who I see are disengaged or not happy, and I say, hey, what's going on, right? And then, so they might tell me, oh, this is the case, I'm not. And so then I'll try and think of a way to get them engaged, right? Sort of alleviate what's wrong. So for example, this example, I let them write the case study paper about what they did, right, rather than the sort of stock one that I give them. So I try to sort of give them a chance to get something out of the course for them. So yeah, I think you can try to sort of individually diagnose if you sort of have these class group activities that give you a chance to go around and talk to people one-on-one.
And they do say that about 10% of your students will take up 90% of your time, right? So I think that that's a fairly common concern. Other questions?
My question is, when you taught your first class, obviously very young, and how did you make yourself credible or people would respect you as an instructor? Did you ever came across the difficulties in learning?
One thing that we talked about when I was in the coffee group that I discussed was that don't worry if you feel like you look really young, because just since you're in the role of lecturer, they'll think you're over 35. They're not gonna consider you younger. They're gonna always think you're older. So again, and then you can bring up, you know, how old you look by dressing really professional. So, you know, if you're an older professor, you can probably wear a t-shirt and jeans and it'll be fine. If you feel super young, then you can wear like a little businessy jacket or dress pants and feel more professional. You can also, something that I've seen professors do who are fairly new professors is talk about their own research. So you can assign a reading based on a paper that you've written if you want to make, you know, if you want to prove to them that you're credible, or talk about, yeah, like I've seen people do that, because then it's like, oh look, this person's written something and it was published, so they don't look as flying as I think they do. That sort of thing. Those are all little tips.
Well, my students think I always get at least one comment on, I think there's one on Rate My Prof, if you want to look me up. And I'm in the University of Guelph, and I got another one on my course evals this year. Apparently, I look like Tina Fey. Well, Tina Fey's nearing her 50s, and I'm in my mid-20s. So to me, this is, oh geez. But it is true, they think that you're older because you're in that role of authority. And I've done a similar thing to what Jenny was talking about as well. I talk a lot about my research, right? Or you say how you know something or how you know this experience. So you can bring up somebody. Let's say I was talking about migrant labor in one of my classes this semester, and I said, oh, this data found by Carrie Prybish at the University of Guelph. I worked with her on the Rural Women Making Change research lines. You know, so even if you're not bringing in your own published research, you're drawing those connections between yourself and the community that you're teaching about. Right? So if you're teaching sociology of work and you draw those connections between you and the other people in your field, automatically you start to look a little bit more credible. So just illustrating that you have that knowledge. Also, a lot of it too, the literature says you should look up a book, Teaching What You Don't Know. And this, the woman who wrote this book speaks a lot about what students perceive credibility to be. And there's three things. The third thing is actual material knowledge. None of it has to do with age. The first one is how we actually present ourselves, like are we organized or are we on time? That's what they want to see. And the other thing is our respect level for them. So are we following our course syllabus? Are we just creating these policies out of the blue that we're making them follow? You know, are we respectful of their time and their needs? Things like that. So these are really the things that they're looking for. And if you make yourself available and accessible, after a while they might seem shocked to see somebody so young, but they'll get over it.
I think that's like the number one worry most new teachers have, right? I think that we sort of overreact. And we try to present too much of a strong face. I think that's where the distancing stuff comes in. So I don't try to do that, right? You know, be professional and all that sort of thing, but you know, get a rapport, respect them too, right? Do you have something that
There you go. Yeah, I was also going to say too, bring it up if it's something that you feel uncomfortable about. My last name is Woodhall. It's a stuffy British old last name. So the first day I'll show up to class and be like, hi, I'm finishing up my Ph.D. My name's Professor Woodhall. I'm sorry, I know you were expecting a 65-year-old white man. Sorry to disappoint, but hello, right? If it really makes you that uncomfortable, address it.
So I want to get what Allison said in her presentation was, they really respect when you say, look, oh, I don't know, but I'll go find out for you. And then you come back the next time and say, hey, I looked it up, here's the answer, right? They really like that. You don't have to know all the answers.